If someone collapses in front of me, I want to be the kind of person who doesn't hesitate to help, especially if it's a child. One day, I helped a girl who collapsed in front of me, and because of that, I missed an important business meeting. I called the company to explain the situation. My boss, Kyle, said something utterly unacceptable, which made me angry. I openly objected, then it led to my dismissal. But the person who came to my aid in this situation was unexpected. My name is Ethan. I'm a 48-year-old salesman, dedicated to sales ever since I graduated from college. Though sales can be tough, I've always liked feeling helpful to others. I worked in sales for over 20 years at a small local electronics store in Nebraska, but it had to close due to aging and declining birth rates in the area. I'm truly sorry, everyone. Please forgive my incompetence. I'll do my best to find new job opportunities for you all. I couldn't blame Mr. Harrison, as he tearfully apologized to the staff. It's the changing times, and sometimes, no matter how hard you try in sales, it's not enough. Many customers expressed their regret about the store closing. Ethan, you've helped us with everything. It's sad that the store is closing, and I'll miss you too. I'm glad to hear that. I've always appreciated how much Grace cared for me since I started working here. I'll be sad to leave, but I'll do my best in a new place. I'll write to you. On the last day, I said goodbye to Grace, a loyal customer who had always been very kind to me. Grace was a refined lady who had always been very fond of me. Thank you. I'll be looking forward to it. Take care and work hard, but don't overdo it. I'd be happy if you could visit when you're back in town. Of course, I will. I'll let you know when I'm visiting. And so, I started a new chapter in my life. Being single, I just need to take care of myself. I gave the re-employment opportunity that Mr. Harrison found to a colleague with a family, and I moved to a neighboring town on my own. It's been about half a year since I started working at my current company. My previous company was very homely, with hardly any issues in human relations, but my current boss, Kyle, has been a source of stress. Hey, Ethan, when will you have the estimate ready? I'm sorry, Kyle. I got a call from a client and haven't started on it yet. I explained and apologized. Besides, there were still 4 days left until the deadline he had requested. There's still time until the deadline, and you said it wasn't urgent, so I prioritized a client's needs. Kyle seemed displeased with my addition. Even so, it's common sense to do the work you're asked to do quickly, right? And the client you're talking about doesn't even bring in much revenue. This is why I find Kyle stressful. He only sees customers in terms of money and changes his attitude based on how much they spend. I understand that a company is not a charity and needs sales to survive. But I can't imagine blatantly changing my attitude based on a customer's spending. Even so, they are important customers. Though their current spending may be small, they could become more significant in the future. If you can't understand which clients to prioritize, you're useless. Forget it. I'll have someone else do it. Kyle, red-faced with anger, demanded a female employee to take on the task. His request, delivered in a tone of rage, was hardly the way to ask for help. The woman, caught off guard, wore a look of panic. She must have been busy with some other work at the time. Kyle often imposes work regardless of other situations. I felt like I had unintentionally involved her in an accident and decided to apologize. During lunch, I approached the colleague, Emma, whom Kyle had burdened with the work. Emma, I'm sorry about earlier. You got dragged into this because of me. Oh, Ethan, no need to apologize, thank you. It's not your fault. Kyle is always like that, Emma said with a smile. We then decided to have lunch together. Kyle used to land big clients and got promoted to senior manager. He thinks he's good at his job, but actually, there have been quite a few complaints from clients and other departments. Emma informed me over dessert, something she heard from a colleague in another department. The truth is, even as a senior manager, he doesn't have that much power in the company. But I think people find him intimidating due to his usual domineering approach. Besides, like it or not, Kyle's assessment as our boss matters. That's why there's this atmosphere where it's hard to go against him. With his attitude, it's no surprise he gets complaints. It would be more surprising if he didn't, I remarked. Exactly. Kyle always sucks up to those higher up than him. Maybe that's why his behavior doesn't reach the top. It's a problematic situation. Emmett and I sighed, encouraging each other to maintain a safe distance from Kyle and get through this. Then, one day, a company I had been handling approached me with a significant business deal. It was the same company Kyle had dismissed as not profitable. However, this time, the deal involved a substantial amount, and upon hearing this, Kyle, with a smirk, announced he would join the negotiations. Listen up, as your boss, I'll be there too. Make sure everything is prepared perfectly. This could be a big win for us. He was suddenly interested, even though he had previously said they weren't worth the effort. I was extremely annoyed by Kyle's about-face. Still, remembering the client's request for me, I tried to focus and shift my mindset. Emma helped me prepare the materials. Of course, Kyle did nothing. Just barking orders without lifting a finger. He would probably take the credit and report it happily to the higher-ups. Kyle had a history of stealing subordinates' achievements for himself. But believing someone was watching and appreciating my efforts, I had no choice but to do it. Finally, the day of the presentation arrived. I woke up early in the morning, prepared, and left the house 30 minutes earlier than usual. It was a pleasant day for a walk, not too hot, with a nice breeze. I decided to walk the distance of one bus stop. At the crosswalk, I waited for the red light to turn green. As I waited, I started walking as soon as it did. At that moment, a young elementary school girl walking ahead suddenly collapsed, as if crumpling to the ground. Shocked, I rushed to her side. "Hey, young lady, are you okay?" I called out, checking for a response. The girl was motionless, her face pale. I gently lifted her eyelid, apologizing, and side was completely white. She might have fainted. I looked at the signal, noticing the green light was flashing. Staying in the crosswalk was dangerous. I picked up the girl and carried her back to the sidewalk. "Are you okay? Can I help with anything?" A woman on her way to work offered assistance, and I thanked her as she helped me lay my jacket on the ground. I gently laid the girl on top of it. While I was considering whether to call an ambulance, the woman spoke to me. "This child seems to be prone to fainting. Look, there's information on the back of her charm." She showed me the back of a charm hanging around the girl's neck. It detailed the girl's condition, a plea for help if needed, and contact information for her mother and a mobile number. "That's true, thank you. I'll call her mom right away," I said. "Could I ask you to take over? I'm running late for work, I'm sorry." The woman who had helped with the first aid apologized, looking regretful. "It's fine, please go ahead. I really appreciate your help, thank you." While repeatedly expressing her gratitude, the woman hurried off towards the station, and I, looking at the girl's charm, called the mobile number listed under Mother. After a few rings, a woman answered. "Hello, this is Jennifer speaking." "Hello, I'm sorry for calling out of the blue. My name is Ethan. I'm with your daughter, who seems to have fainted at the crosswalk." As I explained, Jennifer sounded panicked. "What, really, Ethan? Are you with her right now?" "Yes, there was another woman here just now, but I'm with her at the moment. Should I call an ambulance?" "I haven't called one yet because I wanted to speak with you first." I had debated whether to call an ambulance or her mother first, but decided to contact her mother initially. "No need for an ambulance, thank you. Where are you now?" "I think I'm not far from there. I'll come right away." I described the location to Jennifer. It seemed to be really close to their home. "I know where that is. I'll be right there. Can you please stay with my daughter a little longer?" I could hear the bustle as she prepared to leave. She sounded apologetic. "Of course, it's okay. Please take your time and be careful on your way here." She thanked me several times before we hung up. Sighing, I decided to call my office. Actually, I had left home early, but since I've been assisting the girl who collapsed, I've run out of time. Even if I hurry now, I won't make it to the office by the start of the workday. And it's likely that I won't make it in time for the presentation with the client either. "Hello, good morning. This is Ethan. Is Kyle there?" Emmy answered the phone. "Ethan, it's Emma." Kyle is furious. "Is something wrong? We usually would have been here by now. Everyone was worried when you didn't show up." I could hear voices in the background at the office, relieved to hear from me. While I felt guilty for causing worry and appreciated their concern, Kyle's voice thundered through the phone. "Ethan, is that you? Hand over the phone now. What are you thinking? Being late on the day of an important deal? Are you mocking your job?" Kyle's yelling continued over the phone. His voice was so loud that I instinctively pulled the receiver away from my ear. "Kyle, I'm terribly sorry. I'm not taking my job lightly, but a young girl just collapsed in front of me. It seems like she's fainted, and I'm staying with her right now." I briefly explained the situation, keeping it as simple as possible. "I've just contacted her mother, who is on her way here. Whether she's fainted or not, just leave her. The business deal is more important. Forget about the kid." His harsh words finally made me snap, having already been stressed by Kyle's behavior. "You know, there's a right and a wrong way to say things. A child has collapsed here. You have a child too, right? Could you say the same if it was your own child?" Startled by my firm tone, Kyle briefly fell silent. But true to form, he quickly recovered. He promptly began to retort in response. "You've got some nerve talking to your boss like that. I'll make sure you regret this." He then sneered maliciously. "I'll let the executive director, Mr. Anderson, know you've ruined the deal. You are causing damage to the company, so you are fired. Anyone who defies me or complains is fired. Got it? You're probably making excuses because you're not confident about the deal." His words were disjointed, but I understood I was being fired. My heart raced, not expecting to be fired in such a situation. Before I could respond, Kyle spoke again. "Scared now, can't even talk. Don't bother coming back. You're disqualified as a salesperson. You're fired, fired, bye." Kyle hung up the phone with a loud laugh. I must have been a bit dazed, wondering what to do next. Suddenly, someone spoke from behind me, making me jump in surprise. "Excuse me, was today an important business meeting for you?" I turned to see a woman with a face as pale as a girl's. Engrossed in the call, I hadn't noticed her approach. She might have overheard Kyle's loud voice and the content of the conversation. Feeling awkward but deciding to be honest, I replied, "Did you hear that? I'm sorry you had to listen to such an embarrassing conversation. Yes, it was an important business meeting. I couldn't just ignore a child in need and go to a business meeting. I am truly sorry about that." I assured the woman, Jennifer, who looked like she was on the verge of tears as she expressed her gratitude. "It's really okay, Jennifer. Even if I had ignored the child who collapsed and gone to the meeting, and even if it had gone well, I wouldn't have felt good about it." While Jennifer and I were talking, the girl who fainted from anemia, Sophie, had already been taken to her mother's car. The driver, a burly man, moved swiftly and carefully, carrying Sophie with great care. "Don't worry about me at all. I'm single, and I don't squander my money on gambling or anything, so I have some savings to tide me over for a bit," I reassured her. "But still, Ethan, which company do you work for?" Jennifer asked, almost desperately. I handed her my business card. "ABC Trading. So you work here. I will definitely express my gratitude for saving my daughter." Jennifer expressed her gratitude repeatedly. Thank you, but please, take Sophie to the hospital. As for me, well, I guess I'll just slowly head home, I replied as I watched the car drive official. The car disappeared from sight, and I let out a small sigh before walking towards the station to return home. The next morning, I was awakened by the incessant ringing of my phone. Though I was awake, I was still half asleep. After all, I had drunk more than usual the night before, knowing I had been fired. While I'm not great with alcohol, the thought of not having to see Kyle's face anymore was somewhat refreshing. So, I had 2 bottles of beer and went to bed without setting an alarm, just wanting to sleep as much as I needed. Who could it be, calling a fired man like me? I wondered groggily, checking my phone's display. To my surprise, it was Kyle's name on the screen. Wondering what he could possibly want now, I felt annoyed and honestly, I found it a hassle to talk. Deciding to be true to my feelings, I ignored the call on my cell phone. Once the call ended, I quickly set my phone to silent and went to take a bath. After getting out of the bath, I checked my phone again and was surprised. I found about 30 missed calls from Kyle and around 20 from the office. My phone was almost out of charge, so I hurried to plug it in. The moment I picked it up, another call from Kyle came through, and this time I decided to answer, not wanting any more calls. I was done with the constant ringing. "Hello, what do you want with a fired man?" I answered, expecting it to be about some formalities. I thought Kyle would either yell or speak arrogantly. But his tone was different this time. "Ethan, I'm sorry to ask, but can you come to the office right now?" I was so surprised that I couldn't find my voice at first. Impatient with my silence, Kyle spoke faster. "Are you listening? If you can hear me, get to the office now." His usual attitude snapped me back to reality. "Is this about the paperwork?" Kyle seemed to explode in frustration. "No, the client you stood up yesterday is here at the office. They're saying they won't leave until they see you. Just come quickly." With that, he hung up. I genuinely felt sorry for having missed a business meeting yesterday. The fact that there were calls not just from Kyle, but also from the company, suggested that it had become a big issue at the office. With a sense of resolve, I got ready and decided to head to the company I had been fired from. As I was walking on the sidewalk, a sleek black luxury car smoothly pulled up beside me. "Ethan, thank goodness, I was afraid we'd miss each other. Please, get in." I turned in surprise to the voice calling my name and saw Jennifer from yesterday. "Jennifer, oh hello, what a surprise. How's Sophie doing?" I asked about Sophie, and Jennifer nodded happily, indicating she was doing well. "Yes, she's all better now. Oh, the light's changing. Please get in." "What? Get in? Into the car?" "Yes, come on, quickly." In a hurry, Jennifer urged me to get in, and I got into the back seat of the car. Since I was already in, I decided to ask her to drop me off at the nearest station. When I looked at the driver's seat, it was the same driver who had carried Sophie yesterday. Our eyes met in the rearview mirror, and as I nodded slightly in acknowledgement, the driver returned the gesture with a friendly smile. "Could you please drop me off at the nearest station? I'll take my leave from there." I apologize for getting in the car so suddenly. "Don't mention it. It was me who asked you to hurry. I'll take you to the office, don't worry." Her offer was very much appreciated. The morning had long passed, and it was getting warmer as noon approached. Riding in the air-conditioned luxury car to the somewhat distant office seemed like a good idea. I hesitated but decided to accept Jennifer's offer. "Then, if it's not too much trouble, may I take you up on that offer?" Jennifer looked very pleased with my response. "Of course." And so, I headed to the office in Jennifer's car. We talked about various things on the way. Jennifer shared that her husband was often busy with work, and she was mostly raising Sophie on her own. On the day Sophie collapsed, Jennifer had been worried about her health from the morning, But then she received a call that her grandmother wasn't feeling well. Then, when I called to tell my grandmother that Sophie had collapsed and I couldn't come, she actually scolded me. She said, as a mother, "Your child should always come first. You should go pick her up right away. It must be because your grandmother adores Sophie so much." Yes, she even started going to a gym nearby just to play with Sophie. Jennifer said, and I smiled, imagining the scene. Yet, as the company building came into view, my spirits sank. Unconsciously, I let out a sigh and then apologized to Jennifer. "Oh, I'm sorry. We were having such a pleasant conversation," I apologized. Jennifer just laughed and forgave my sudden change in mood. "Don't worry about it. It's understandable not to feel like going to the office the day after being fired, but it'll be all right," Jennifer reassured me. Her words struck a chord with me. What do you mean by it'll be all right?" I asked. Jennifer didn't answer, just smiled and encouraged me to get out of the car. "Let's go." Jennifer walked with me into the office, leaving me puzzled. As we entered, we saw Kyle with a pale face. He rushed towards me without even glancing at Jennifer. You did," Kyle exclaimed, grabbing my shoulder, but he was stopped by a sharp voice. "Stop that, what do you think you're doing?" a man in an expensive suit said. Behind him was our company president, Williams, looking equally pale. I was about to thank the man when Jennifer ran to him. "Dad, sorry for the wait. I've brought Ethan." "Oh, thank you." Jennifer's call of Dad left me wide-eyed, and then Williams approached me. "Ethan, this is Chairman Thompson of Thompson Industries, the client you missed the meeting with." I was stunned, looking at Chairman Thompson. "The chairman of Thompson Industries," I exclaimed. Just as I was about to apologize for missing the meeting, Chairman Thompson spoke. "Don't apologize to me, Ethan. It's us who should thank you for saving my granddaughter. Thank you so much." Jennifer expressed her gratitude alongside me. It was unbelievable that Jennifer was Mr. Thompson's daughter and Sophie was his granddaughter. Stunned by the revelation, I quickly came to my senses and addressed Mr. Thompson. "There's no need for that, sir. What I did was just a human response. However, I do regret not being able to attend a business meeting." Mr. Thompson, looking at me, had a gentle expression. "Sophie is my precious granddaughter, and I am always worried about her health. I am so grateful for your kindness in helping her." Though Mr. Thompson spoke kindly, his expression turned stern as he addressed Kyle. "My daughter called me in tears. After hearing about your harsh words towards Ethan, who helped Sophie, I was disgusted. You called him unfit as a salesman for missing the meeting, didn't you?" Under Mr. Thompson's sharp gaze, Kyle stood rigid and pale. Sweating profusely, he began to stammer out a response. It was an important meeting with Thompson Industries, and abandoning it seemed irresponsible. Really, and leaving a child who has collapsed is responsible as a human being, Mr. Thompson retorted, leaving Kyle speechless. If Ethan hadn't been there, Sophie could have been hit by a car or worse. Mr. Williams, the company president, started to apologize, his face pale as well. "I am truly sorry for this incident," Mr. Williams apologized earnestly. Mr. Thompson responded with an even more stern look. "Mr. Williams, this isn't just about my granddaughter's incident. Are you aware of how your employees behave towards clients?" "I'm not sure what you mean," Mr. Williams inquired in a weak voice. Sighing, Mr. Thompson continued. "It seems you're unaware of how poorly Kyle is perceived, not just at our company but at others too. I did some asking around after this incident." With a surprised expression, Mr. Williams looked at Kyle. I couldn't help but feel exasperated at Mr. Williams's reaction. Kyle was adept at ingratiating himself with those in higher positions. Mr. Williams, being one of them, probably had no idea about Kyle's true nature. Kyle seems to be rather full of himself, with his condescending speech and arrogant behavior. I didn't hear a single good thing about him. Kyle was trembling so much he looked as though he might collapse. "Kyle, what on earth were you thinking?" Mr. Williams scolded Kyle. However, it was Mr. Thompson who firmly interjected. "You're the president." Before getting angry at him, reflect on your own role as a leader. Mr. Williams shriveled. Seeing Mr. Williams's demeanor, Mr. Thompson sighed and spoke calmly. "I understand it's not usually appropriate to interfere in a client's personal matters. However, I must speak up this time. Mr. Williams, could you consider rescinding Ethan's termination?" "What?" I exclaimed in surprise. "Don't be surprised, Ethan. You're a well-regarded salesman, the complete opposite of Kyle. Everyone says you're always kind, smiling, and supportive." I felt tears welling up, moved by his words. I was overwhelmed with emotion and had to hold back tears. It was a genuinely happy moment for me. The fact that my efforts to help others had been recognized filled me with deep gratitude and joy. "You're a true salesman, and we want you to continue handling our account. You have a kind heart, and it would be a waste to lose you here, unlike someone else." At that, Kyle finally collapsed to his knees. Since we were talking at the company's entrance, I noticed a crowd had gathered around us. However, the fact that not a single person offered Kyle any assistance was a clear indication of his lack of popularity and respect among his colleagues. A few employees, prompted by Mr. Williams, helped Kyle up and led him away. "I'll take responsibility for this matter, Mr. Thompson. Ethan won't be fired, and I'll conduct a thorough investigation into Kyle's behavior," Mr. Williams promised. "Thank you very much. I appreciate your cooperation." After the conversation at the entrance concluded, I went outside to see off Mr. Thompson and Jennifer. "Thank you so much, Mr. Thompson. You've been incredibly supportive. I believe Mr. Williams will handle things properly from now on, and the company will improve," I said, expressing my gratitude. Mr. Thompson patted my shoulder with a smile, encouraging me. As I said, "Ethan, you are a lifesaver for Sophie, my precious granddaughter. Whatever you need, I'm here to help." "Not just that, Ethan is an excellent salesman," Jennifer added. "My father also started as a salesman and worked his way up. He loves people who have the right spirit." Mr. Thompson smiled bashfully at Jennifer's words. Seeing their smiles, I couldn't help but smile myself. "Thank you. I'll continue to do my best, never giving up on being helpful in sales," I said. "Keep it up, Ethan. You can do it. If you ever have trouble, don't hesitate to contact me," Mr. Thompson encouraged. After shaking hands with Mr. Thompson, I watched as he and Jennifer left. Subsequently, a major personnel overhaul took place at the company. An investigation into Kyle's behavior was conducted, revealing many testimonies about him from within the company. Mr. Williams was reportedly shocked by the findings. Kyle's punishment resulted in his transfer to a smaller company within the corporate group. This transfer, being indefinite, meant he would remain there until his retirement. As Kyle packed his belongings, not a single person approached to speak to him. "Thank you for everything," he said in a quiet voice, his once confident demeanor gone. I later heard he had become much quieter and more subdued at his new posting. Afterward, Mr. Williams personally apologized to me, and I was promoted to a team leader position. Though my responsibilities and workload increased, I enjoyed my job in sales more than ever. "Ethan, there's a request from a client, but it's a bit difficult for me. Any ideas?" "Sure, let me take some time to look into it." With Kyle gone, everyone seems more vibrant and enthusiastic about their work. The atmosphere of constantly having to gauge someone's mood has completely disappeared. Previously, there wasn't a culture of openly discussing issues or collaboratively solving problems. Instead, it seemed like everyone was on edge. I appreciated this positive change. My connection with Mr. Thompson's continued, and I even had dinner with him, Jennifer, and a now recovered Sophie. Initially nervous, I was put at ease by Sophie's talkative nature and Mr. Thompson's gentle demeanor, very different from his business persona. This is all part of fate. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask. As a salesman, you can grow even more. Keep solving our customers' problems. Mr. Thompson's words became like a talisman to me. I resolved to become even more helpful to others. No matter the hardships or challenges, I knew there were people who believed in me. Therefore, I'll continue to walk the right path as a person. Keeping that sentiment in mind, I will carry on with my work in the future. I will carry on with my job, the sales work I love so much.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick, what's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.